Hello and welcome. This channel is about learning new things. Today we're going to be talking about a topic I wish we didn't need to learn about. But whatever the reasons behind it, here we are. Today we're going to be talking about how to respond to an active shooter scenario. Now I'm a high school teacher, so I want to be sure to cover this in a school setting, but I believe that this is an important subject for everyone. So we're going to cover other scenarios as well, so you're equally ready in a mall, a movie theater, or any number of other locations. Law enforcement will tell you in a situation like this that you have three primary options: run, hide, and fight. Let's consider each of these. First of all, a quick disclaimer. I'm not in law enforcement. I'm not a firefighter or a first responder. I'm a public high school teacher. Now, I am a certified trainer by a leading institute to teach about active shooter situations and trauma response. But this is not that training. This video is going to be an abridged version, actually a conglomeration of a variety of different types of trainings that I myself have gone through throughout the years. It's by no means intended to replace a formal multi-hour training on this topic. All of the information that I'm going to present here is not guaranteed to protect you if you find yourself in one of these events. An active shooter situation is by very definition dynamic and unpredictable. The purpose of this video is to just get you thinking about how you would respond, to give you some tips and tricks for some techniques that you might not have thought about before. These things can be scary, but I find that if you know a little bit about how they work and get yourself a set of skills that you can use, that you will feel more empowered and less helpless. And so that's my intent here. If you employ any of this stuff and it goes south, don't blame me. This is not a replacement for a formal training. So let's go ahead and get started. Before you choose to run, think about what you're running into and whether or not you'll be safer in that position when you get there.
Now, if you find yourself in a place that has a lot of walls, like a school or a mall or something, sound can bounce off of the walls in really strange ways. So it can make it sound like the gunshots might be coming from this direction, when in reality they're coming from that direction. So if you choose to run, you might run in the direction where you think the bullets aren't coming from, when in reality you're running straight into them. So keep that in mind if you choose run as an option.
Also considering if running to another location is going to put you in a safer position. Are you running into an empty parking lot or an open space with no cover? Even if you put some distance between you and the bad guy, if you're exposed, it might be more dangerous than sticking put if your current location has lots of hiding places. And that brings us to hiding. Now, some criminals might fire blindly, but for the most part, they're going to be looking for targets, and they'll probably conserve their ammunition until they find something to shoot at. So staying out of sight means the criminal won't identify you as a target. If possible, try to choose a hiding spot that allows you to stay low to the ground. If the bad guy does start firing randomly, he'll probably do so while maintaining relatively level fire from head to hip level. That means that staying low will allow those rounds to pass harmlessly over you. Now let's talk for a moment about cover versus concealment. Concealment won't stop bullets, but it will hide you from sight. Examples of concealment include walls, tables, cabinets, etc. Since they aren't bulletproof, staying low is important. Now, cover, on the other hand, will stop bullets. If you find yourself outside, consider hiding behind the front wheel of a large vehicle. The brake rotor is made of a thick metal that will stop a bullet. The engine block is also made of lots of thick metal that will do well against a bullet. Be sure to stay away from the passenger compartment and trunk, however. The doors are made of metal, but it's thin and it won't stop a bullet. Also be aware that shooting under a car can cause bullets to skip off of the ground and bounce back up and hit you in more critical areas. Now let's consider fighting as a response. Remember, the enemy has a long-range weapon, so unless you're carrying a firearm as well, you'll need to cover distance in order to fight. If the perpetrator has his weapon up and ready, it's unlikely that you'll be able to cover much ground before he can target you. Your best options for fighting are if he's right next to you, and if you see him starting to pull out his weapon out of a bag or something, then don't hesitate. You need to attack him before he can get his weapon up and into the fight. Concentrate on dominating the hands. If you can keep them off of his gun, then you'll have a fair fight. The other option is an ambush. This is the method of choice I use in my classroom, but more on that later. So let's talk scenarios now. Imagine that you're in a restaurant. Choose a location that gives you a view of the door, preferably a location near an emergency exit or a back door so that you can escape and hurry if things go sideways. If you can't get a seat near an emergency exit, at least take note of where the exits are so that you know what your options are. Do this every time you enter a new building or a room. The key is to take note of your options whether there's an emergency or not. When something unexpected happens, our brains have to process through 4 different steps. First, we observe the emergency situation. Next, we orient ourselves. That is to say, we look for what we have to work with. Where are the exits? Are there things that I can use as a weapon? Are there any hiding places? Next, we decide. Since we know what our options are now, we have to decide what the best option is. And finally, we act. That is, we carry out the plan that we decide on. This 4-step process is called the OODA loop, O-O-D-A, and it's common for people to lock up for several seconds while they work their way through the steps. Like a deer in the headlights, any moment spent idle could be deadly. Taking note of exit locations and risk factors every time you enter a new space, even if no threat exists, means that we can skip those steps in the OODA loop and get right to the action step faster if things do take a turn for the worst. Now, I had mentioned that you should try to find a seat with a view of the front door. This is likely where most threats will manifest. Assess each person that comes in. Do they have their hands concealed under their shirt, perhaps hiding a handgun? Are they wearing a large coat on a warm day, perhaps concealing a long gun? Are they wearing a mask or something to conceal their face? All of these things could be what we call pre-attack indicators. Identifying a possible threat before it starts means that you might be able to get a head start on escape. Don't forget, listen to that inner voice too. If it feels like something isn't right, go ahead and get yourself out of there. Now, some people might call this being paranoid, but one could just as easily call it being prepared. Regardless, nothing I've suggested costs you anything. It won't prevent you from having a pleasant evening out with your family, but it could save your life. So what do you do if you find yourself in a mall or similar location? So the process is going to be pretty much the same, but because you're going to be going through so many different kinds of stores, you'll need to be more cognizant of where your exits are. Each store may have an exit in a slightly different location. Some may have a back room while others don't. And so you're just going to need to pay closer attention to where those exits are.
So I'm in a theater, and I'm not sitting in the middle where people usually sit. Instead, I'm sitting on the edge, and that gives me easy access to these exits right here. So if something were to happen, I could get down low behind the seats and use those for concealment, and then I'd have easy access to the outside. Also, I was in the middle someplace, and I had to crawl out of here. I'd have to go by all these people that might be being on the outside. I don't have anything in my way between me and the exit.
Now let's talk about schools. Unfortunately, this seems to be one of the top locations where these types of crimes take place. If you're a teacher, you should have a robust response plan in place. Most school districts stress the hide part of the run, hide, fight action plan. And in most cases, that's probably going to be the right call. Lock your doors, turn off the lights, and that makes it harder for the bad guy to see into your room. Barricade the door, get the kids down low, and hide if you can. If the perpetrator can't get into your room, it'll make it harder for him to attack your students. But we don't want to discount the other options either. A well-placed bullet could disable a door lock, and barricading might not help much if your door opens outward. A belt looped around the door spring might help as a secondary locking mechanism, but what if that fails too, or what if there isn't time to set it up? Then it's time to fight. As we start discussing the fight section of this, I want to just give you a little bit of warning. if you choose to practice this with other people, be advised that someone could get hurt. When I practice this with others, I always start off slow and say, okay, we're going to be practicing just the movements. We're going to build some muscle memory, and then we're going to speed up slowly. But the intent is not to hurt me as the trainer. The intent is not to hurt the other person either. But be aware, someone could get hurt. So please don't blame me if you decide to practice this with other people and someone gets hurt. Now there's two different ways you can approach this, and both of them kind of build off of the ambush idea. The idea here is that you want to get your students down low so that if the intruder comes in through the door, he initially isn't going to see anybody. Then everybody's going to pop up and throw a bunch of stuff at the bad guy. What you throw is kind of dependent on what you do next. If you decide to throw big, heavy things like rocks or staplers or whatever might be around you, then wait for all of that stuff to clear. Try to get all of that stuff thrown all simultaneously, and as soon as that hits its target, then a tackle team, a team of 2 people, will jump in afterwards. One person goes high and the other person bear hugs the legs. And the idea here is that you're trying to knock the bad guy over. If you're bear hugging their legs, they won't be able to take that step back. And if somebody hits him in the chest, then that's going to push him over. When you start to fall, your hands kind of instinctually go up, so there's a good chance he might actually drop his weapons at that point. Once he's on the ground, then everybody in the room needs to tackle him. We need to focus on dominating the hands to prevent him from getting access to any other weapons that he might have on him. Within the first month of every new school year, I tell my students about the plan and we practice it. Of course, we don't use the rocks, we use these soft, squishy balls. I play the part of the bad guy. Now, even though the balls are soft, some of my students still have a pretty good arm, so I wear a big puffy jacket to provide a little bit more insulation. I also use a paintball mask to protect my face and eyes, and something like the lid off of a storage box or something to protect my lower half. Hey, look! Yes, that was a lot better. For this next demonstration, I'll be using a fake firearm. This is a plastic AR-15. It is weighted. It's approximately the same weight as a regular gun, perhaps a little lighter. And it's balanced the same way in everything as well. So it does make for a good demonstration. But it is 100% fake, made of plastic, so please no comments down below saying that I was doing unsafe things with a firearm or anything like that. So, fake demonstration gun. Yeah. Grab it, force it to the ground, and hip check the person to drive that out of their hands. Someone else can come in from the other side and try to bring them to the ground as you're pulling the weapon out of the hand. So a couple of things to keep in mind here. When you grab the weapon by the barrel, this might be hot if they've been putting several rounds through it. So you might want to keep perhaps a pair of gloves in your drawer, or if you don't have something like that, maybe toss a sock over your hand. But if there's not time to do any of that, then just go ahead and do what you got to do. You're going to get burned. Just try to tough it out. But we can fix burns, but we can't fix dead. So get the job done. You can also try to grab it by the hand guard instead. This is here to prevent you from getting burned. If you can grab it by that part, you'll be okay too. As you're deflecting the barrel down, keep your eye on where that barrel's going, and don't ever let it get pointed at you. Keep it at the ground where it's safe, and then hip check that person to drive it out of their hands. One of the things that I didn't realize until I was actually practicing this with other people is that the way that the gun is being held, you actually get a mechanical advantage by grabbing it by the barrel like this. With very little effort, You can force it down, and it will take the person holding the gun quite a bit of effort to keep it up. So you will win that fight, even if you're a small person, especially if you're throwing your weight into it to drive that down. Another technique that you can use is very similar, but here you're not trying to throw things that will hurt the person, but things that will distract them, lighter objects and so forth. The idea here is that your tackle team is going to attack the perpetrator at the same time that the objects are coming in. If you're going to do something like that, you want to make sure that the objects you're throwing aren't going to inadvertently injure your tackle team. So whatever it is that you're throwing at the perpetrator, just be aware of the second phase, the people who are going to be engaging the bad guy directly. We don't want to injure them. Once on the ground, it becomes all about controlling the hands. Try to get the gun away from him and don't allow him to get access to any other weapons that he may be hiding. Remember, we don't know what other threats he has on him. Does he have additional guns, knives? Does he have a bomb vest? We need to control those hands to prevent him from getting to anything else that can hurt us. The entire class can rush him at this point. Hold those arms down. Finally, someone needs to go outside and start yelling to any law enforcement that might be around. We got him, come arrest him, he's in here. You'll need to choose volunteers to be the person who yells go, and 2 more to be on the tackle team. Make sure your tackle team volunteers know what they're signing up for. Normally, when someone has a gun, our instinct is to run away. In this instance, you're looking for people who are willing to run toward the danger. Have your students consider this before volunteering for the tackle team. Some students have trouble with the idea of throwing rocks at another person since there's a distinct risk that this could kill that person. I explained that it's fine, and if they aren't comfortable, they don't have to participate. In that case, they should just stay low while everyone else takes care of business. I also like to explain that none of us has asked to be in this position, and under normal circumstances, none of us would seek to harm another person. Even now, in this situation, our goal isn't to kill the perpetrator, but rather to simply stop the threat. There's a real possibility that the stoning may result in death of the bad guy, but that's not on us. He created this situation, and he has to suffer the consequences. I've heard it said that if you put the coin in the jukebox, then you get to dance to the tune. A few things of note when practicing this with your students. Tell your tackle team not to actually tackle you. This could hurt both them and you. Have them practice instead rushing you, but stopping just shy of actually touching you. Only choose tackle team students that you know you can trust to honor this request. Don't go outside with your paintball mask on. You might accidentally cause a panic. I usually pretend to be entering the room, but they don't actually leave. Don't have your students hide under their desks. It takes too long for them to crawl out of this space before popping up. If you have to fight, you're going to want to be free to move around quickly. Also, they may hit the desk with their head or their back as they start popping up. Instead, train them to stay in the aisles between the desks. Maybe even consider tipping the desk over on its side to create a better concealment. Know that the teacher is the biggest target in the room. If you're still in the fight, then you should assist with the tackle team. However, train your students as though you have already been taken down. That way they'll still have a chance even if you aren't in a position to help. With how frequent these things are becoming, some teachers and parents might consider a bulletproof vest or a ballistic backpack insert. Vests can be heavy and make you look very tactical. You probably don't want to wear something like that all day, and if people see it, it might scare them into thinking you're about to launch an attack yourself. Perhaps better than a vest for a school setting is the backpack ballistic insert. These panels are made to fit inside of a backpack, which essentially turns your backpack into a one-sided bulletproof vest. These are great because they offer protection without the look of traditional body armor. If you choose bulletproof options, know that they are not all created equal. Soft, lightweight armor generally won't stop rifle rounds, but heavy metal plate armor will. There are ceramic plates that are both lightweight and rated for rifle rounds, but they are prohibitively expensive. So research which option is best for your specific needs. There are lots of other things that you can do to prepare for an active shooter scenario, like taking a self-defense class or obtaining a permit to carry a concealed weapon. But remember, most schools prohibit anyone from carrying a weapon on school grounds, even if you have such a permit. So know the laws in your jurisdiction. It truly is a shame that we have to discuss this topic at all, especially with regard to children in schools. The issue is complex, and there are a lot of misconceptions on both sides about what the root causes are. I don't want this video to be about those issues, but rather to focus on creative and constructive responses. If you have tactics or techniques you think would be useful in an active shooter response, please let me know in the comments. If you want to debate the larger political issues behind this problem, I'd argue that this wasn't really the intent of the video and therefore shouldn't be the forum for that discussion. Regardless, I hope that you got something useful out of this. Stay safe.